Uh, Thank you, witnesses, for being here. I think it is important, since these three bills were just filed, to focus on the ideas behind these three bills. They focus on emergency exemptions, on state involvement, and on expedited transfer. First of all, on these so-called emergency exemptions, I think some of this is semantics. There's an attack that a company would get exemptions from regulations, but as I understand it, the reason for exemptions is these are requirements that mainly apply to operating nuclear plants. And so when you turn from an operating nuclear plant to a non-operating plant, a plant that's being decommissioned, that's a very different animal, I assume. I mean, I'm not an expert, I'm not an engineer, but I assume there are big differences between one and the other. Is that correct, Mr. Weber?
You are correct, Senator Vitter. The regulations that the exemptions are sought from are really applicable to operating nuclear power plants. And when the plant converts to a decommissioning status, the risk posed by that operation, the security needs, the requirements for emergency preparedness are reduced compared to what they would be at an operating status.
So the exemptions we're talking about are specifically because we're moving from an operating plant to a non-operating plant. Is that fair to say?
You are correct. And we would not approve those exemptions unless we had confidence in the safety and the security of those plants.
Right. So I think some of this is semantics. You know, you could go about it a different way. You could have a different set of requirements, a different rule book for a non-operating plant. And then you could say there are no exemptions. I mean, if you don't like the word exemptions, let's do that. But some of this is semantics because there are exemptions from rules that are directly applicable or more applicable to an operating plant. Is that correct?
That is correct. In fact, if I could add, back in the 90s when we faced the last wave of decommissioning, we actually considered the need for a rulemaking. And we had proposed that to our commission, but the events of 9/11 overtook those activities, and we focused on the more pressing problems in the day, and that was the security of the United States.
Okay. In terms of songs in particular, obviously the NRC has looked at this issue of the location of the fuel. Now, I know because of our oversight responsibility, I know the experts housed at the NRC, so I assume they were involved in looking at this, Mr. Weber?
Absolutely.
Okay. Mr. Mosier, compared to that, you're offering your personal opinion about lack of safety. What's your background in terms of the nuclear energy industry and how these things work? What's your specific technical background?
Well, I'd just like to say that the key issue that we're addressing here is whether the safety risk for the public is diminished when the reactor stops and you are just storing spent fuel. And the NRC itself has said that risk is not diminished. So I'm quoting NRC documents. I'm a scientist as well as a council member, and I know a lot about radiation biology. I'm not a physicist, but I can read the documents, and I have.
What's your specific science background?
I'm trained as a pathologist. I've worked in radiation models. I'm currently working on the AIDS virus, so that's a different expertise.
Okay. And in your testimony, I think you said there wasn't a clear answer about taking these fuel rods and encasing them immediately. So what would you suggest immediately versus their storage at the site right now? What would you suggest be done tomorrow as the alternative?
The faster we can get these fuel rods into dry cask storage, the better. There are some old rods that are not high burnout fuel that could be moved immediately. That would help. The new high burnout fuel rods may have to stay in the pool for a considerable period, but any move to decrease the crowding in that spent fuel pool would be a positive for the safety of people in Southern California.
Okay. Mr. Fertel, as I understand it, this expedited transfer issue, which is again, a specific focus of one of these bills that have been introduced, has been looked at extensively by the NRC, and as I understand it, they recommended that it be considered a Tier 3 issue, a low-priority issue, and they more recently recommended that the Commission not put time and resources into pursuing this because of lack of significant safety gains. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. They issued their study just a few months ago, and they're waiting on a Commission decision, but that's absolutely correct.
So that came out of the expertise, presumably, of the NRC?
Yes, it was done by the NRC staff, and it was recommended to the Commission. It was looking at, was there safety benefits to removing rapid removal of the spent fuel into dry cask storage or leaving it in a pool. Their conclusion was there was not enough of a safety benefit to do it.
Thank you.
Okay.